My mother forced me to marry Isabella, but when I discovered she cheated for 18 months and got pregnant with her lover's baby, my mother chose my ex over me, lied in court for her, and destroyed her own 32-year marriage to raise another man's baby as her granddaughter. I'm 31 years old, work in real estate, and I need to tell this story because what happened a few months ago basically destroyed my family. And there are still people who don't understand why I cut contact with my mother. The truth is, this goes back way further, to when I was a kid. But I didn't realize it until it was too late. You know? I guess I should start from the beginning. When I was like 7 or 8 years old, and my mother sat me down in the kitchen and told me something I never forgot. We were decorating Christmas cookies. I remember perfectly the smell of cinnamon and sugar. And out of nowhere, she says to me, "You know, Marcus, I always wanted to have a daughter." Just like that. No filter, no context, nothing. I just stood there with the piping bag in my hand like, okay, and what do you want me to do with that information? But obviously, I didn't say it out loud because I was 8 years old. She kept talking like it was nothing, saying that she had imagined having a little girl who she would put in pretty dresses and teach to do makeup and go shopping with, that whole perfect vision she had in her head. And then she looked at me and said, "But well, I had you," and smiled as if that fixed what she had just said. I don't even know if she realized how much that hurt. I mean, she was basically telling me I was her plan B, her second choice, the son she didn't want but had to settle for. My father, Robert, was never like that with me. He always supported me in everything. Came to all my baseball games, helped me with homework, taught me to drive when I turned 16. But my mother, Patricia, always had this weird thing with me, like a distance I didn't understand when I was a kid, but now makes complete sense. It's not that she was a bad mother exactly. She fed me and bought me clothes and all that, but I never felt like she really loved me. You know what I mean? It was like she was fulfilling an obligation, but her heart wasn't in it. I remember in elementary, a school, there was an event for Mother's Day where we had to make a craft, and all my friends' moms were super excited looking at what their kids had made, but when I gave mine to her, Patricia just said, "Thanks, honey," and put it in her bag without even looking at it properly. Things like that. Small, but they accumulate over the years, until one day you realize you were never enough for her. Fast forward like 20 years. I was 26, had just gotten my real estate license, and things were going pretty well for me. I was living in a decent apartment, had my own car, was building my life, you know. One day, my mother calls me and tells me she has someone perfect for me, that it's the daughter of a friend of hers from high school, Catherine, and that we should meet. I told her I wasn't interested, that I could find my own dates, but Patricia insisted so much that I finally agreed just to get her to stop bothering me. The girl's name was Isabella. She was 24, was an elementary school teacher, and honestly, when I met her, I thought she seemed nice. I didn't feel sparks or anything like that, but she was pretty and polite, and my mother was so excited about the whole thing that I thought, well, what could happen? I can give it a try. We dated for a year, and the truth is, it was never that incredible relationship you see in movies. We had good moments, sure. We went to the movies and out to dinner and all that, but I always felt something was missing. The problem was that my mother was obsessed with Isabella. Literal. Every time I talked to Patricia, the only thing she wanted to talk about was Isabella. How perfect she was. How pretty she was. What a good wife she would be. And then she started with the baby thing, saying things like, "Oh, Marcus, Isabella would be a wonderful mother. Imagine how cute her children would be." And I'm there thinking, okay, calm down. We've only been dating 6 months. But my mother didn't stop, and I think that constant pressure was part of why I ended up proposing to Isabella when we hit a year. It wasn't because I was madly in love, but because I felt it was what was expected of me, what my mother wanted, and some part of me was still seeking her approval, even though I'd never really had it. Patricia planned the entire wedding. And when I say entire, I mean I basically just had to show up on the day of the ceremony. She picked the venue, the flowers, the menu, the cake, everything. She spent like $30,000 on that wedding, half she put in and the other half, Catherine, Isabella's mother. My father asked me several times if I was sure about getting married, if I really loved Isabella, and I told him yes, even though honestly I wasn't sure about anything. We got married in June. It was a huge wedding with like 200 guests, and my mother cried with happiness during the whole ceremony. Afterwards, she told me it was the happiest day of her life, which, now that I think about it, is pretty sad, considering it was supposed to be my wedding, right? The first months of marriage were okay. Isabella left her teaching job because she said she wanted to focus on making our house a home, and I was fine with that because I earned enough for both of us. The plan was that she would take care of the house, would cook, clean, that kind of thing, while I worked. But after a while, I started to notice that the house was never really clean. I'd arrive after being out all day showing properties and find the breakfast dishes still in the sink, the bed unmade, clothes thrown everywhere. At first, I didn't say anything because I thought maybe she was having a bad day or something. But weeks passed, and then months, and the situation didn't improve. When I'd ask her what she'd done during the day, Isabella always said she'd been busy, but never specified with what. What she did tell me all the time was that she'd been volunteering at church. According to her, she went 3 or 4 times a week to help with different programs, the food bank, catechism classes for kids, that kind of thing. My mother was delighted with this, always saying, "Oh, Marcus, how lucky you are to have such a devout and generous wife." I nodded, but the truth was, something didn't add up. Because if Isabella was spending so much time at church, when was she supposed to have time to do anything at the house? But I didn't say anything because I didn't want to be the controlling husband who questions his wife's every move, you know? This went on like this for about a year and a half. Isabella would leave the house early, like 9 in the morning, and come back at 5 or 6 in the afternoon. She always smelled of fresh perfume when she arrived, which seemed weird to me because if you'd spent the day working at a food bank, you wouldn't smell like you'd just gotten out of the shower. You know what I mean? But I swallowed it all, believed her because I had no reason not to believe her. Until one day, I think it was a Tuesday, I had a last-minute cancellation with a client and decided to stop by the church to surprise Isabella and maybe take her to lunch. I went in and looked everywhere, asked about her at the administrative office, and the lady who was there looked at me confused and said, "Isabella, who?" I gave her full name, and the lady checked on her computer and then told me, "I'm sorry. We don't have any volunteer registered with that name. We've never had her." I felt like I'd been kicked in the stomach. I stood there like an idiot, trying to process what I'd just heard. I asked the lady if she was sure, if maybe Isabella was registered under another name or something, but she confirmed no, that she'd been working there 15 years and knew all the volunteers. I left that church with my hands shaking. I didn't know what to think. My head was spinning with 1,000 possibilities, and none of them were good. I decided not to confront Isabella yet because I needed to be sure. I needed proof of whatever was going on. The next few days were torture. I acted normal in front of Isabella, but inside I was destroyed, questioning everything. The next day, when she left the house, I waited like 20 minutes and then followed her. I felt like a stalker, literal, driving 3 cars behind her, but I needed to know the truth. Isabella didn't go to church. She drove like half an hour to a neighborhood I didn't know, one of those new developments with all the houses looking the same, and parked in front of a light blue house. She stayed in the car for a few minutes, checking her phone, fixing her hair in the mirror, and then a guy came out of the house. He was tall, athletic, was like in his 30s, and when Isabella saw him, her face lit up in a way I'd never seen it light up with me. She got out of the car, the guy hugged her, and then, right there at the entrance of the house, they kissed. It wasn't a friend's kiss, it was well, you know what kind of kiss. And then they went into the house together. I sat there in my car, parked like 3 houses down, unable to move. I couldn't breathe properly, felt like I had a huge stone in my chest. Part of me wanted to go knock on the door and make a scene right there, but something stopped me. Instead, I took out my phone and took pictures of everything. Of Isabella's car parked there, of the house, of the license plate of the car that was in the driveway, which I assumed was the guy's. I stayed like an hour until I couldn't take it anymore, and left. That night, when Isabella came home smelling of her usual fresh perfume, she asked me how my day had been, and I told her fine, all normal. While inside, I wanted to scream. I did this for 2 weeks. I followed her 6 more times, and every time it was the same thing. Isabella would go to that house, stay there for hours, and then come back home like nothing. I took pictures of everything, documented the dates and times, even hired a private investigator who confirmed for me that the guy's name was Derek. He was 35 years old, worked in construction, and oh, here comes the best part. He had been Isabella's boyfriend in high school. Basically, my wife had been having an affair with her high school ex for who knows how long. Probably since before we got married, if I think about it. When I had enough evidence, I confronted her. She came home on a Friday night, and I was sitting in the living room with all the photos printed on the coffee table. Isabella walked in all smiley, gave me a kiss on the cheek, and then she saw the photos. I watched her go pale, literal. All the color left her face. She started stammering excuses. That I didn't understand. That it wasn't what it looked like. That Derek was just a friend. All the classic lies. I told her not to insult me anymore. That I had proof of everything. That I knew exactly what she'd been doing for the last 2 years. She cried, begged me to forgive her, said it had been a mistake, that she loved me. All the emotional manipulation you can imagine. But I was done. I told her I wanted a divorce, and that the next day I'd go to a lawyer. The next thing I did was create a group chat with my family and Isabella's family and shared all the evidence there. Photos, dates, everything. I said, just so everyone knows why I'm divorcing Isabella, here's proof that she's been cheating on me with her high school ex for years while I worked to support her. The response was immediate and chaotic. My father wrote to me immediately saying he was so sorry and was there for whatever I needed. Isabella's mother, Catherine, started defending her daughter, saying that surely I had done something to push her to this, that marriages have problems, and that we should go to couples therapy. And my mother, Patricia, didn't say anything for hours. When my mother finally responded, what she said destroyed me more than discovering the affair. She wrote, Marcus, I'm sure this is a misunderstanding. Isabella is a good girl, and I know you can work this out. Marriages have ups and downs. You can't just give up at the first sign of problems. I responded, Mom, I literally just sent you photos of your daughter-in-law kissing another man. This isn't a misunderstanding or an up and down, it's infidelity. And she told me, well, maybe if you'd been a better husband, she wouldn't have looked for comfort elsewhere. I read that message like 5 times, unable to believe what I was seeing. My own mother was blaming me for Isabella's affair. My father exploded in that chat, told Patricia she was crazy. How could she defend Isabella after seeing the evidence? But she didn't change her stance. I hired a lawyer and started the divorce process. Isabella hired her own lawyer, an expensive one that I don't know how she was paying for, considering she didn't have a job. But then I found out my mother was giving her money. Yes, you read that right. My own mother was financing my ex-wife's divorce against me. When I found out, I called Patricia and asked her what the hell she was doing, and she told me, Isabella needs support in this difficult time, and you have good income, you can pay your own lawyer. I told her I couldn't believe what I was hearing, that she was my mother, not Isabella's, and she just said, Marcus, you need to think about what's best for everyone, not just for you. About 6 weeks after starting the divorce, Isabella called me crying, saying she needed to see me urgently. I agreed to meet her at a public cafe. I didn't want to be alone with her anywhere private. She arrived with swollen eyes from crying and dropped the bomb on me. I'm pregnant, Marcus. The baby is yours. I felt the floor disappear beneath me. I asked her how far along she was, and she said like 2 months. I started doing mental math, trying to remember the last time we'd had sex, and honestly, I couldn't be sure. We'd had sex occasionally, even while she was having the affair, because I didn't know anything at that point. But 2 months ago was right when I was following her and documenting everything, so the dates coincided both with it possibly being mine and possibly being Derek's. I told her we'd do a paternity test after the baby was born, and she started screaming right there in the cafe, saying, how could I doubt her, that of course the baby was mine, that she'd never had unprotected sex with Derek. I told her that didn't mean anything, that protection fails all the time, and that I wasn't going to accept any responsibility for that baby until I had DNA proof. She kept crying and saying I was cruel and heartless. I left her there at the cafe and left. 2 days later, My mother showed up at my apartment without warning. I opened the door, and there was Patricia with that face she made when she was about to give me a sermon. She came in without me inviting her and told me we needed to talk. She gave me a whole 20-minute speech about responsibility and family and doing the right thing, saying that baby was my son and I needed to take charge, that I needed to get back with Isabella and fix my marriage. I told her first, I didn't know if the baby was mine, and second, even if it was, that didn't mean I had to get back with someone who had cheated on me for years. Patricia turned red with rage and told me, if you don't accept that baby and don't support Isabella, I'm going to testify against you in divorce court. I'm going to tell the judge you're a negligent father and a bad husband. I was in shock. I asked her if she was serious, and she said, completely serious. That baby is my grandchild, and I'm going to do whatever is necessary to protect it. I threw her out of my apartment. Literal took her by the arm, led her to the door, and told her not to contact me again. I called my father and told him everything. Robert was quiet for a moment and then said, Marcus, your mother has lost her mind. This isn't normal. I don't know what's wrong with her, but I'm going to talk to her. I told him not to bother, that Patricia had made it very clear which side she was on. That night my father confessed something to me he'd never told me before. He told me that when I was a baby, Patricia had wanted to have another child immediately, specifically a daughter, but they'd had fertility problems, and after several failed attempts, the doctors told her she couldn't have more children. He told me Patricia had gone into severe depression for months, that she'd gone to therapy but never really processed that loss. My whole life my mother had been dealing with the pain of not having the daughter she wanted, and now she saw Isabella as that substitute daughter, and Isabella's baby as her chance to finally have what she'd always wanted. The divorce case went to court 3 months later. Isabella was like 5 months pregnant at that point, looked very pregnant, and her lawyer obviously used that to gain sympathy, and my mother fulfilled her threat. Patricia testified against me. She sat there on the stand and told the judge that I had been a distant and cold husband, that I had never treated Isabella well, that I worked too much and neglected her, all lies. Isabella's lawyer asked her if she believed the baby was mine, and Patricia said, without a doubt, I know my son, and I know that baby is his. He's just being stubborn and proud because he's angry. I was sitting there in the courtroom listening to my own mother publicly destroy me and couldn't do anything but clench my fists under the table. My lawyer tried to discredit her testimony by pointing out she had an obvious bias and was emotionally involved, but the damage was already done. The judge was an older woman, like 60 years old, and I could see on her face that my mother's testimony had affected her. At the end of the hearing, the judge ruled that the divorce would proceed, but that the matter of child support and custody would be resolved after the baby was born, once a paternity test was done. She ordered Isabella to take the test immediately after the baby was born, and that I had the right to be present during the sample collection to ensure there was no manipulation. She also ordered that in the meantime, I had no obligation to provide any kind of financial support until paternity was confirmed. It was a small victory, but it didn't feel like one, honestly. The baby was born 4 months later. Isabella sent me a text message from the hospital saying, a girl was born. Her name is Emma, in case you care. I didn't respond. 2 days later, we went to the lab for the paternity test. It was super awkward. Isabella with the baby, me on the other side of the room, not talking to each other. They took blood samples from the baby, from me, and officially also from Isabella, although technically it wasn't necessary. They told me the results would take like a week. That week was eternal. I didn't sleep well, couldn't concentrate at work, just thought about the possible results. Part of me, a small and stupid part, almost hoped the baby was mine because at least that would mean something. You know? It would mean not everything in my marriage had been a complete lie. But the other part of me, the logical part, knew the odds weren't in my favor considering how much Isabella had been with Derek. The results came on a Tuesday. I opened the envelope sitting in my car in the parking lot of the lawyer's office because I couldn't wait. Probability of paternity, 0%. I wasn't the father. I read those words like 10 times. I felt a mix of emotions, relief, sadness, rage, all together. Relief, because I wasn't tied for life to Isabella. Sadness, because it meant every moment of those last years had been a farce, and rage because my mother had testified in court, had put her hand on the Bible and had sworn that baby was mine when clearly it wasn't. I sent the results to Isabella. She called me crying, begging me to please accept the baby anyway, that we could be a family, that she had made mistakes but loved me and we could start over. I hung up on her. Then she called me like 20 more times until I had to block her number. Then she started sending me messages by email and social media saying the same thing. Please, Marcus, the baby needs you. Genetics don't matter. You can be her father. I blocked everything. The next thing I did was probably petty, but honestly I didn't care. I made a public post on Facebook. Something I never do because I hardly use social media. But this time I did. I wrote, "For everyone who's been asking me about my divorce and the baby, I want to clarify things. The paternity test results confirmed what I suspected. I am not the father of Isabella's baby. She had an affair during our marriage with her high school ex-boyfriend, and that baby is the result of that affair. Some members of my family decided to support Isabella during this process, even after knowing she cheated on me, and even testified against me in court, falsely claiming the baby was mine. Thanks to those who have supported me during this difficult time. I attached copies of the paternity results with all personal information blacked out, except the 0% result. The post exploded. I had like 200 comments in the first 2 hours, most people supporting me and saying Isabella was a horrible person, some questioning why I was sharing something so private publicly, and my family divided between those who supported me, my father, some uncles and cousins, and those who thought I was being cruel, mainly my mother's friends. Patricia sent me a private message saying, "How could you do this? How could you publicly humiliate Isabella this way? That baby is innocent in all this." I responded, "You publicly humiliated me in court by lying under oath, so don't come at me with morals now." She didn't respond. But here comes the part that still has me messed up to this day. My mother didn't stop supporting Isabella. After the paternity results came out, after it was proven that Isabella had cheated on me and the baby wasn't mine, Patricia kept going to visit Isabella and the baby. She started calling herself Grandma, buying things for the baby, posting photos on her Facebook with the girl. Literal acted like she was her real granddaughter. My father told me Patricia was giving Isabella money monthly, like $500, to help with the baby's expenses. When Robert asked her why she was doing that, Patricia told him, "Someone has to take care of that baby. Marcus is too selfish to do it, and Derek doesn't want anything to do with them." Oh yeah, because that's another thing. Derek didn't take responsibility for the baby either. Turns out when Isabella told him she was pregnant, he basically told her it wasn't his problem and he didn't want to have kids. He refused to take a paternity test, refused to sign the birth certificate, nothing. Isabella tried to sue him, but apparently Derek hired a good lawyer and managed to avoid any legal responsibility. I don't know exactly how, but he did. So there was Isabella, single with a baby, no job, depending on the charity of my mother and her own mother, Catherine. My father put up with this for 6 months. 6 months of watching Patricia spend their shared money on his son's ex-wife's baby. 6 months of listening to her talk about Isabella and the baby like they were family. 6 months of constant fights about all this. Finally, Robert called me and told me, "I'm going to separate from your mother. I can't continue with this. She's completely lost her mind, and I no longer recognize the woman I married." I told him I completely understood and didn't judge him. A week later, my father packed his things and left the house. Patricia apparently had a breakdown when he left, calling all the relatives saying Robert had abandoned her, that he was a bad husband, that it was my fault for having caused all this family division with my divorce. My father asked me if he could stay with me while he found his own place. Obviously, I told him, yes, that he could stay as long as he needed. Robert moved into my 2-bedroom apartment, and honestly, it's been nice having him here. It's like reconnecting with him after years of Patricia always being in the middle. We go out for breakfast on Sundays, watch sports together, talk about things. He told me he's already started divorce proceedings from Patricia, that after 32 years of marriage he can't do it anymore. He says the woman he married isn't the same person she is now, that this obsession with Isabella and the baby is sick, and he can't be part of that anymore. Patricia is still the same. Like 2 weeks ago, she posted on Facebook a photo with Isabella's baby, with the caption, "Grandma Day, with my beautiful granddaughter Emma." The comments were a mess. People who know the situation asking her what was wrong with her, how she could do that, and her deleting all those comments and only leaving the ones from the few people who supported her. Catherine, Isabella's mother, also supports her in all this. The two of them act like they're best friends now. They do playdates with the baby together, go shopping together. It's super weird. You know what's the saddest part of all? That my mother finally has what she always wanted. She has a daughter in Isabella. She has a granddaughter who's a girl like she always dreamed. She managed to build the family she wanted in her head. Only to do it, she had to betray her own son and destroy her real marriage. And I don't even think she sees what she did wrong, you know? In her mind, she's doing the right thing. She's being generous and compassionate. She's taking care of an innocent baby who needs help. She can't or won't see that she chose a stranger who betrayed me over her own son. I haven't talked to my mother in almost 8 months. She sent me messages occasionally, mostly on holidays, saying things like "Happy birthday, Marcus," or "Merry Christmas, I hope. You're well." She's never said sorry, never admitted she did anything wrong. I just acts like nothing happened. And like I'm the one being irrational for keeping distance. My father says she asks about me sometimes when they talk about the divorce and logistical issues, but that he doesn't defend or criticize me, just keeps the conversation focused on the papers they need to sign. Sometimes I wonder if I should try to have some kind of relationship with Patricia, not for her, but for my father, because I know it hurts him that his family is so broken. But then I remember that day in court, watching her sit there and lie, watching her choose Isabella over me again and again, and I know I can't. Not after that. Some things just can't be forgiven. You know what I mean? It's not that I'm waiting for an apology because I know it's never coming, but I'm not going to pretend everything's okay when it's not either. My life now is better in many ways. The divorce was finalized 3 months ago. I don't owe Isabella anything because it was confirmed the baby wasn't mine, so I literally have no legal connection to her. I'm working more than ever, doing really well in real estate. Sold like 6 properties last month. I'm dating someone new. Her name is Rachel. I met her at the gym like 2 months ago, and she's completely different from Isabella, has her own graphic design business, is independent, honest, straightforward. We're going slow, because obviously I have trust issues now, but it's going well. My father is thriving too. He already found his own apartment but still comes to my place like 3 times a week. I think he likes the company after so many years in an unhappy marriage. Last week my cousin told me Isabella is trying to date on dating apps but is having problems because guys get scared when they find out she has a baby and the father's not in the picture. Apparently Derek moved to another state, married someone else, and cut all contact with Isabella, so she's basically alone raising that girl with the help of her mother and mine. I'm not gonna lie, part of me feels satisfaction knowing the consequences of her actions caught up with her, but another part just feels sorry for that baby, who didn't ask to be born into this messed up situation. That girl is going to grow up without a father, with a mother who's a compulsive liar, and with a grandmother who isn't really her grandmother and who's only there for her own weird psychological agenda. It's not fair to her. I guess the lesson in all this, if there is one, is that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally, like your mother, aren't always going to be on your side. Sometimes their own issues and traumas are stronger than the love they feel for you, and there's nothing you can do about it except protect yourself and walk away. It hurts to know I'm never going to have a normal relationship with my mother, that I probably won't go to her funeral when she dies, because honestly, I don't know if I'll feel anything, and that any future children I have will never know their paternal grandmother. But it is what it is, you know? You can't force people to choose you, and if they don't, well, then they don't deserve to be in your life, period.